Now, one of the things that we like to do at the HRO Today Forum is ask you, as part of networking and peer-to-peer learning, to work together. So we had an interesting statistic that arose in the 2017 HRO Today RPO Baker's Dozen. The question that we asked was, could I get a better pickup on this mic, please? A little bit more. The question that we had asked everyone was that what percentage of the companies in the total sample, which was well over 400, are currently using the same vendor for RPO and MSP? I've been predicting for years that hiring will become, that classification of full-time, part-time is going to become increasingly less meaningless as we move toward the on-demand economy, all right? And we are in fact seeing that. You heard Kim Hauer earlier talking about contingent labor strategies, because at most of these conferences, when you talk about workforce, practices, everyone defaults to talk about permanent labor. But on any given day in most of your organizations, somewhere between 5% and 20% of your active workforce are contractors, contingent workers, independent consultants. So if you think of it that way, that's a huge portion of your business. If you remove the contingent labor, you would not be able to function. So what strategy do you have? Well, years past, there were two different strategies, one for permanent and then sort of this other thing over here for contingent. We've seen that change. So we asked the question, what percentage of you are using the same provider? And the number came back at 21%. So that means just in our little survey, we had over 80 companies that were flying that banner under the same flag. Now, if I'd asked that same question 5 years ago, what do you think the number would have been? 0. That's correct, because we did. It was 0 because HR was afraid to, quote unquote, put all of their eggs in one basket. Okay? So now we ask the follow-up question. What percentage of you are planning to use the same vendor next year? Answer, 32%. That means 40 more companies are going to pick a single solution provider in the coming year. Part of their plan. So if you have a deal coming up for renewal, don't get all cocky about it, okay? But this is something that has now become a strategic advantage as opposed to a fear of putting too much work with a single vendor. So the goal today is to have you guys do a SWOT analysis kind of conversation. And I'm going to ask an expert to join me up here on the stage. Dan Oakes is the president of RPO North America for Randstad Sourceright. Dan has more than 20 years of HR and recruiting experience working for and with Fortune 100 companies in a wide range of industries, from high tech to telecom to hospital healthcare. Basically, if you're in the room here and you're in business, Dan's probably worked with a company like yours. And one of the things he's really passionate about is the re-engineering, the metrics, and the program management. So when you start to think about, all these other things at HR analytics and branding that go into this, it's very important that you be able to address all of these issues to address both permanent and contingent hiring. So with that, to talk a little bit about, this analysis we want you to do about what are the obstacles and opportunities in implementing a single talent strategy that takes into consideration both sides of your workforce. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome, there you are, you're on this side, man. All right, Dan Oakes to the stage. Hey Dan, good to see you, man.
Am I mic'd up? Yep, I can hear myself. So I get the enviable task of standing in front of you guys while you're trying to eat, finish your dessert, and pay attention at the same time, while also then going to be brainstorming with your table mates there. So we'll see how this goes off here in the next 30, 35 minutes or so. So thank you, Elliot, for the introduction. I am president of Randstad Sourceright RPO in North America. Been around for about 9 years or so. A lot of friendly faces in the room that I have seen. So it's great to see everybody. I'm going to go through today. We're going to talk a little bit about evolution. I was thinking through as prepping for this. I've been in the industry since early 90s. So evolution to me back then was placing a display ad in the Washington Post to track talent. That was the big thing your hiring managers want. And then not too long after that, the precursor to Monster, Career Mosaic, came out for about a nanosecond. And then the ATS system, Resumex, came out, and that was the big thing back then. So and then you kind of fast forward to now and think about all the change that's going on in everybody's world, both technology-wise, process-wise, people-wise, and it's pretty impressive. So Elliot asked Randstad Sourceright and myself to talk a little bit about the next evolution, which is really around total talent workforce and what that means. So I'm going to spend maybe 5 minutes or so just teeing up a little bit further what Elliot has already done, and then we're going to do a breakout session, if you'll call that, at your tables. I know we probably need to speed up on some time, so we'll cut it down to maybe like 10 minutes to talk amongst yourself, and then we're going to, rather than me try to share all of the knowledge, this is really going to be for you guys to share back knowledge of what you guys think about the topic called Total Workforce Solutions and where we go from here. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll try. We had about 40 minutes planned. I'll try to cut out a few minutes to make up some time. That's really what the agenda is about. If I can click this correctly. Hang on. There we go. So for about 5 or 6 minutes, I'll just cover a few more trends. Again, we've heard a few already, but I'll cover just a few more that have come out. Talk a little bit about what does total workforce solutions mean, just one quick slide. And then I'm sure everybody has gone through some type of SWOT analysis, risk analysis out there, so we'll do that as well. I got a little bit of a copy of one, and then at your table, you'll just make some notes. I think what would be helpful when we get to that point is to have probably one designated note taker, because I think Elliot wants to be able to potentially in the next another version of HRO Today to put some of our best practices out there. So from a trends perspective, Randstad puts out an annual report called Total Talent Trends, I should say, and what pops out to me on this slide are really two different themes, a tech and a touch theme. So as we think of the evolution of us trying to hire total talent, whether it's contingent, whether it's permanent, technology as well as a touch comes into play. You can see on the right-hand side, 52% of those surveyed said that the digitalization or the technology side has really been or has benefited their company, and 17% have really said that tech component has really driven their strategy and has been successful. So the tech side is very critical. You think of your workforce, whether it's healthcare, whether it's engineering, any space, technology really plays a hand in how are we attracting, how we're engaging, how we're sourcing them, and ultimately selling them on the job. So as you think about total talent, technology plays a part. On the right-hand side, it really discusses around, 49% of the C-suite leaders saw integrated services as definitely a driver for the future. So that's what we're talking about here in this breakout session. So in terms of this particular survey, your leadership really is driving towards or thinking about integrated talent solution, both from a driver as well as an efficiency standpoint. And I'll skip the robotics. That really plays into the technology side. The world is changing. We guys know it. Whether you are a North America company, there's probably something global that goes into your everyday. So on the economic side, we all have a global role, right? So economic shifts are coming on. A lot of the some political discussion that happened earlier. That's all playing into our strategies going forward. So that's at a macro level. At a demographic level, you guys are definitely noticing a shift in the workforce. So heavily influenced by gig workers or the gig economy or those freelance workers. So 35% now make up the workforce. I've seen stats that in the next couple of years, that'll be over 40% of the workforce will come from freelancers. So what do we do about the freelancers? You get the millennials, had a good discussion this morning around millennials. My kids are a little bit older, 22 and 20, but I've never talked to my kid probably in the last 2-3 years on the phone. It's always been by a text or a FaceTime. So, texting, social media is very big for the up and coming. And then tech shifts. Everybody in here has played or has played with technology at some point. Artificial intelligence is probably that next thing that's coming out. It's really hard to believe that a robot, if you will play a hand in us in terms of our recruiting, but that we're not too far away from that. So all that really has an impact on the workforce. That as you guys begin to think through, do we go to a one model integrated solution? All those what do those trends mean, and what's the impact, and what does it mean to us as HR practitioners? And I've pretty much covered these, but just to call out a couple, there's the total workforce on the top, so we have to build those capabilities and really combine the perm with the contingent. We got to align our HR opportunities using that technology. I was working with a client, one of our clients recently, or early over the last year or so, and the shifting is coming from, or we're shifting towards, not just filling that seat in the quickest way with any talent that matters, but it's really that journey that we're going to take a candidate on. So using technology, using a total talent solution really helps us drive that journey between finding and engaging that talent, that resource, and putting them in the chair. It's about that right fit. So technology, we've got to align ourselves, obviously, or not obviously, but using technology to help us with that. Smooth transition relative to the workforce, aging workforce. Again, we've talked about the gig workers, so how can we allow or manage ourselves better to get into that process of smooth transition, and really about the management of the providers. I want to talk to Mike. It looks like he might be celebrating. I want to talk with Mike how he went from 175 down to 1. That's very impressive. But obviously, managing and aligning those partners to do that work is critical. So last slide, and then we're going to start breaking out. So Elliot's really talked about this slide here, but this is really the evolution of the contingent side with the RPO side. In the past, they have been separate. They've actually been separate buyers. So procurement tends to buy the MSP, the contingent side. HR plays a bigger hand in on the perm side. We're seeing that come together. So a lot of the buys now are combined procurement and in HR. But you can see the evolution from outside in, moving towards being very outcome based in the evolution that has happened through on both the perm side and the contingent side. And lastly, Elliot's already given the stat, so I'll skip this stat, but definitely, talking about one provider, this number is very impressive to see that companies are actually considering moving into a one provider. Okay. So that hopefully frames it up. So we've got global impact, we've got millennials, we've got gig workers, we've got technology, we've got many different partners out there. We have your own in-house abilities or capabilities. You got to buy, build decision. So now really the question out to you folks. Hopefully, I'm not sure what dessert was, but it looks like the clinking of the plates have stopped. So my idea at this point, or what we had talked about, is at your tables, think through, and again, everybody I'm sure has gone through some type of SWOT analysis, but take the first question or the big question on the table, and that's total workforce solutions. What's the strength of that? What are the pros of that? What might be a weakness of that? What would be a kind of a showstopper? What might not make it successful? What are some of the threats that are in there? So those are those outside, and it could be inside, but some of those factors that would stop a total workforce solution to come into play. And then opportunities, I would think of opportunities more of that buy, build. So how do I as an organization take that concept of total workforce and apply it to myself? So what opportunities exist in terms of building that? I would also say an opportunity could be, are there some technology plays in there? We've got separate systems. We've got an ATS system that manages the RPO side. We've got a VMS system that operates the contingent side. We've got an FMS system coming to manage the freelancers. So there's an opportunity potentially, is there one system that might be able to combine all of that? So at this point, Hopefully there's enough note-taking ability on your table, but amongst yourselves, let's go through the SWOT. Kind of jot down the top 1 or 2, maybe even 3 ideas in each one of these buckets. Take 10 minutes or so, and then we'll get the mics out and hear from folks to share information.
Just to let everybody know, 2 quick things. One is that on your table is actually a case study with Merck where Randstad actually does provide both solutions.
Looks like this.
And some of the quick observations in the context of an article. But what you do today, this analysis, will be published in HRO Today. So when we go around and collect from the tables, I'd like not only to get what you say when we pass the stick mics around, but also your handwritten notes, okay? And hopefully it's more legible than the things on the back of your badges. Kathy, talking to you. All right, very good. Thanks, Dan. Why don't we get started?
All right. So Elliot's given us 15 minutes to do a recap, try to make up a little bit of time. So we'll, I think it's almost 2 o'clock now, so we'll quickly go through. If I ever get stumped, I've got enough people in the crowd to help me, but I also rely on Bob Lopes, Tracy Mansour, and Teresa Holmes to help me out as well. So, let's, won't probably obviously get to all the tables, but if we can go through maybe a couple of strengths around a total workforce solution. Does anybody want to lead us off with some strengths? Why would we do this? Up front?
Thank you. So we had a number in this category, but leading our efficiencies, decreasing costs, simplicity for the business leaders, total company view, reporting, best practices, and when you have one vendor, they become more of a partner.
And the vendor, do you? Last one?
One vendor becomes more of a partner.
Partner. Mm-hmm. And the reporting side, tell us about the reporting.
Global reporting, a view onto your total workforce and labor spend. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, good.
One of the comments that we made was you have one throat to choke.
I heard that at a couple tables, actually.
All right.
Yeah.
We also said, very similar to the other table, one of the things we said is, I think when specifically speaking about an RPO, RPO teams, I think can tend to operate with more intensity tied to what they're doing because they know that if they don't perform, their contract is at risk, there might be fees involved, et cetera.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those were some of the noted ones that are a little different.
So is the intensity a good or bad thing, or what's the?
Well, I lead a team, and I'm going to tell you it's bad and good.
Okay.
I mean, it's good for the client,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But the intensity level of the
pressure.
work, exactly, it's high stress.
Yeah. So is the strength there? If it was a one provider, then I don't want to put words in your mouth. Does a contingent player not as intense? So the strength would be you get some of that fulfillment.
No, that I would say for the client,
Okay.
that it's a strength because the outsourced team is operating at an extremely high level due to SLAs, et cetera.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right. Having lived that world, I agree with that intensity.
We said that there's some opportunity to focus on data integrity instead of having disparate systems where we're collecting different kinds of information. We can focus getting exactly what we need to do the types of analysis that we want to see across the board. And also that we would have fewer vendors and only one bill.
Which is easier. So so having one vendor reduces
the number of purchase orders coming into the system and processing those is.
Yeah. And in data integrity, so is that an opportunity, you said, to improve data integrity?
It's a strength that we only have to focus on a single system, the method of collection, the method of storage. We can, instead of trying to get multiple vendors to adhere to the types of things we'd like to collect, have a single vendor focus on all of the things that we need so that when it comes time for the opportunity of reporting, we're looking at that single source that is going to have more integrity.
Okay. But one more table for strengths. That's a good one. Anybody else? Anything different? One throat to choke, efficiencies, data, reporting. haven't really heard access to talent. So does it broaden out the access to, as we talked about earlier, more of the gig workers, more of the freelancers along with? Is that, do you guys see that as a strength, or do those? Yes, no? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So we'll go from the pros, the positive side, to the other side. So how about some of the weaknesses that stand out there? What would be a con or a downside to move into a total workforce solution? Any volunteers? There's one up front, there's one back there. We'll do one in the back first. That's fine.
Oh.
You're close.
Sorry.
Oh, okay, go. We'll hold that there. We'll go over here. Sorry.
One of the comments that we had at our table was just kind of the regulatory challenges of making sure that tracking contractors versus employees and what jobs, and it just adds another complexity on the regulatory side and really keeping those separate.
Classification, sure, yeah. Okay.
We had two primary weaknesses. At first, we struggled to think of a weakness, I think, as a group, and then we came up with a couple. First, a single point of failure. If you select one vendor, one unified provider, and outsource.
All your eggs in one basket?
Yep. And that also could potentially introduce, one vehicle for industry views and benchmarking and those things, all of that coming from one source. You could have a myopic viewpoint. And then we talked a little bit about the adverse impact to FTEs and their experience if they felt like they were just kind of lumped together with all other workers that may be classified in other ways or coming from other channels and other sources, and that could have a cultural impact on the makeup of the workforce.
All right. Tracy, you want?
Yeah, we had some comments. So we actually have Elliot at our table, so of course he's always a great source of information. So he said, he thinks the biggest concern, and I wouldn't disagree necessarily, is provider capabilities. He used a term faux PO, faux POs instead of RPOs. So I thought that was pretty clever, and I think it does take the right provider to understand and implement what would be a total talent solution. And then some of the other great comments from the folks at our table is, a thread is just the C-suite commitment to a true outsourced, integrated, collaborative model. Do we, in fact, have the buy-in from that C-suite to execute as we need to? And one of the other opportunities that we saw here at our table, at least in our engagement and conversation, is those outlier positions, as I think our team called it here. Can somebody really outsource for those very niche positions? And the perception, can we overcome that with internal stakeholders that we're able to fill those slots for very niche roles? So that is, a few of the statistics, along with hiring managers and the perception around losing the power associated with the recruitment of a role. Those were some of the opportunities or threats as we saw them.
Great. Okay. All right, my timeline is down to 7 minutes, so I can see the clock ticking down. So any other weaknesses on that haven't been discussed? And those are some really fantastic ones. Anything else? No? All right, so moving to opportunities, which are, how can we roll this forward? How do we get to being a total workforce solution? A couple of opportunities have come up at various tables, but who wants to go with a couple of leads for the opportunities for this? I'm good at picking on people. All right.
One that we had at our table was a lot of times the recruiting for the contractor versus the employee is separate. And so the recruiters could really kind of focus on recruiting all of the talent seamlessly. So we saw that as an opportunity.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things I have read, just in terms of research and what we've discussed even within our organization, is really about developing the talent pools. So maybe someone's not a fit for a full-time position, but maybe they're open and interested as well as qualified for contingent. So I think one of the other opportunities, or an opportunity possibly, is developing talent pools corporate-wide that you could slot them in various roles. So I don't know if that popped up on anybody's, but we have talked a lot about that in terms of our own organizations, developing those talent pools.
Yeah, and one of the other potential possibilities is that with people that are already in your different types of talent, whether they're full-time or contingent, et cetera, that you could identify for them opportunities to stay with your organization in a different role as they grow. So they go from being someone who wants to travel all the time to wanting to put down roots. They want to travel more. Like, as their life shifts, you can grow with them and identify those opportunities in a single system as you're doing sort of that analysis and retention piece.
Yeah, that whole mobility we talked about a little bit earlier today. Yep. Yeah, it's great. What else, opportunity-wise? All right, so wrap up with what would stop this from happening. So moving to a total workforce solution, lots of pros, lots of cons. I've heard the one throat to choke, which we all, we hear every time we talk to a client about that. So what are some threats that would enable, is that the word? Not give us the ability to roll forward or have you roll forward with the total workforce. What stops that from happening? Up here in front.
Thank you. One of the things that we had is consolidation of vendors. So if you have multiple total solution providers and they start going on an arms race and trying to acquire other vendors, are you gonna end up working with a vendor who doesn't have the resources because they didn't consolidate, they didn't buy as many providers? Think about when they scoop up staffing companies, for example. And the other thing we have is antitrust issues.
Okay.
If there's too much consolidation. And then the last thing we have is the battle between HR and finance, or HR and procurement. It's either an opportunity or a threat.
So what is that? So how are you envisioning that battle? Tell us about that.
Like, who wants to lose power? Who wants to lose budget? Who wants to gain budget?
What pot of money are you taking it from?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, it's good. What else? Has anybody tried this? Anybody want to admit to it? All right. Any other threats that would stop you from wanting to move forward with this?